The 5 most unusual military units. Bizarre, weird, whatever you want to call it. Let's go.
Number 5. The Potsdam Giants. Armies have consistently sought to recruit the biggest, strongest, and most skilled warriors into their ranks in the hopes of obtaining a military advantage over their rivals. However, in the 18th century, King Frederick William I of Prussia turned this desire into a bizarre and all-consuming obsession.
Doesn't surprise me this guy did something bizarre. Look at this character.
Spending incredible amounts of his wealth on the construction of a personal regiment of giant soldiers who even today would be considered tall, but during that period of time were considered to be inhumanly massive, creating a fighting force that would eventually be used by his son and successor, Frederick the Great, to transform Prussia from a relatively minor German kingdom into a great European power. Yet, while busy building Prussian military power...
Now look at that guy. You tell me in the comments, what do you think's wrong with him? I'm sure I can't say it here, but let's keep going.
King Frederick developed an unusual passion for men of great stature, becoming besotted with the idea of building a regiment of soldiers that would contain the tallest men in Europe, collecting the towering individuals like toy soldiers into what became known as the Potsdam Giants. But tall soldiers, they are my weakness. Quickly set about collecting the rare giants from around his kingdom, and indeed the wider world, dispatching agents to foreign lands to seek out and acquire any child or man of unusual height. Parents were enticed with large payments to hand over their tallest sons across the kingdom, keen to please their monarch, kept a watchful eye out for any children under their charge who were expected to grow to unusually great heights.
This guy's got a fetish with tall men. Alrighty.
When his own kingdom was emptied of all of its tall men, the king looked to foreign lands, receiving giants as gifts from Austria, Russia, and as far afield as the Ottoman Empire. Yet even then there were simply not enough tall men to satisfy the king. In 1730, the Prussian ambassador to...
I could see that accomplishing something before rifles, I guess. But most real tall guys that I've ever met aren't that coordinated. So I don't know if I want a super tall guy. Do you guys? Take aside his other weird behavior, but just does it make any sense?
London reportedly participated in the kidnapping of an Irishman named James Kirkland, who was an incredible 7 feet 2 inches tall.
This guy's a total fruitcake. What do you guys think? Put that one in the comments.
With many of the men reaching over 7 feet tall to as much as 8 feet, yet these impressive figures were never sent into battle, the king perhaps afraid to lose any of his precious specimens in combat, ordered to march through his bedchambers when the monarch was suffering from one of his frequent illnesses, the bizarre procession led by a tame bear, who was said to have been the regiment's mascot. Kitted out in...
What a total freak fest this guy is. I never heard of him, and I know why. It's like male geisha giants.
His son and successor, Frederick the Great, did not share his father's infatuation with the regiment, which he viewed as a wasteful expense, merging the 3,200 men into other existing units. However,
now his son had some sense. The dad, he was a light.
Number 4. The Filthy 13. The antics of the unruly group of men of the 1st Demolition Section of the 506th U.S. Parachute Infantry Regiment would be the real-life inspiration for the world-famous book and movie The Dirty Dozen, not because of any serious crimes they had committed, but from their consistent and willful disregard for superior officers and army regulations, their time off the battlefield spent in frequent drunken brawls, locked up in the brig.
I've known a bunch of guys like this. They weren't the Filthy 13, they just were dirtbags when I was in the military. You guys know any of the Filthy 13 in modern day? Put that in the comments.
Men who arrived at the regiment but were considered to be too ill-disciplined or out of control for other units were sent to McNeese's group, which, despite earning the nickname...
They sound like a group of SF guys to me. That's what they'd probably be doing today. Which do you think they'd be in? Which SF group? Put that one in the comments. I've got mine right here. I'll share later.
...of Filthy 13, sometimes numbered up to 18 men. Poaching game from nearby estates, stealing vehicles, officers' whiskey, and anything they wanted that wasn't nailed down. Any of the men who happened to earn promotions would find themselves quickly demoted again due to their wild behavior. Yet despite such a disorderly reputation,
they didn't want to kick him out because they needed him, right? but they didn't want to get him promoted and put him in charge of something, so they kept him around. Makes sense.
The men seem to have gotten away with such questionable behaviour due to their impressive skills in combat, the group of outcasts becoming known as men who were capable of getting difficult jobs done. Being a paratrooper was a dangerous enough job as it was, with the average life expectancy calculated to be just 1.5 jumps. The men usually only given enough food for one day, as it was thought that most of them would not be alive long enough to eat it all. However,
those are some statistics. Give you enough food for a day because you make it 1.5 jumps. That's the average. I don't like those averages.
Some of the missions the 13 were assigned had casualty estimates as high as 80%. On the eve of the Normandy invasion in 1944, the men received their orders to land behind German lines and secure or destroy bridges to prevent enemy reinforcements from reaching the vulnerable Allied beachheads. In an effort to psych up his squad and hopefully intimidate his enemy, the men were captured in a famous photograph applying war paint to each other, while sporting unusual mohawks shaved into their heads. Half of the group would be wiped out while successfully accomplishing their mission in Normandy, and the survivors would go on to see action in Operation Market Garden.
See, I don't have a problem with that. You're doing a mission where you know the risk of dying is pretty high. Who gives a shit if you put war paint on or cut your hair in a mohawk? Let somebody who's got to complain about it, let them go. Let them send their kid. That won't happen.
And the Battle of the Bulge, where they participated in a drop that was expected to inflict up to 90% casualties, yet only lost a single man. Number 3. The Night Witches. The Second World War's Eastern Front conjures up images of slaughter and cruelty on an almost unimaginable scale, and the USSR on the verge of total collapse. Stalin resorted to throwing women into the fight, recruiting an unusual female-only regiment of combat pilots, whose incredible exploits would earn the respect of their skeptical male colleagues, while at the same time terrifying their German enemies, who dubbed them the Night Witches. With German forces just 19 miles from Moscow, Leningrad under siege, and with 3 million Soviet soldiers dead or captured in the first 6 months of the invasion, Stalin needed every able-bodied citizen to join the fight, to use her celebrity, prestige, and skills as a pilot to organize a regiment of women-only pilots to carry out nighttime combat bombing missions.
Why wouldn't you? I don't see how women can't be as good as a man as a pilot. A little smaller, a little easier in the aircraft. They can do the job. What the hell? I don't have a problem with that one.
Had initially been barred from combat, Stalin ordered the creation and deployment of 3 women's Air Force units.
Oh yeah, they could care less about gender equality. He was running out of pilots. Okay? We get that. What do you guys think about the pilots being used during this time? And then all of a sudden it stops and we don't integrate female pilots until far later, at least in the U.S. here. Put that in the comments, because I don't see any reason why a woman couldn't be an outstanding pilot.
The regiment received over 2,000 applications from women keen to defend the motherland, from which Marina Raskova selected 400 recruits, most of whom were little more than girls aged between just 17 and 26, requiring the 2-woman crew to carry out between 8 and 18 risky missions per night for their limited armaments to inflict any real damage on the enemy. The slow and obsolete aircraft were no match for advanced German fighters, and so the Night Witches had to make use of their weakness in order to stand any chance of surviving. Realizing that, as their maximum flight speed was lower than the stall speed of German fighter craft, German pilots found them very difficult to shoot down, as their own planes were travelling so much faster, causing them to speed past the Witches before they could get more than a few shots off.
Who would ever think being slow would be an advantage in the air? Not me.
Their attack strategy evolved into idling the engines of their plywood aircraft as they approached their target under cover of darkness. Flying at night in temperatures that were often below freezing, the bitter wind and cold inflicted frequent frostbites, while accidentally touching an exterior surface of the plane could rip off bare skin. The plywood planes were especially susceptible to tracer bullets, which could easily engulf the entire aircraft in flames should just one round find its target, while the weight of the bombs and low altitude of flight meant that no parachutes were supplied on board, making surviving a crash unlikely. Growing to 40...
Definitely a suicide mission. You're in a wood plane, no parachutes, it goes slow, and you can carry max 2 bombs. Obviously, no guns on the plane to shoot at anybody, so you might as well just be saying, "Hello, enemy, shoot me down, please."
Person cruise, the regiment would eventually fly an incredible 23,000 missions. Number 2, the Sacred Band of Thebes. The elite unit of men widely celebrated for their courage and skill in combat. Their stunning victories over many powerful enemies, paving the way for the city-state of Thebes to become a dominant power in Greece. However, what makes the Sacred Band so unique is that the unit entirely consisted of 150 pairs of male lovers who lived, trained, and fought together.
Oh, the Greeks. What do you guys think of this unit? I think if it works and they want to bring their lover along to fight, more power to them.
Initially formed to protect the city stronghold from outside invaders, the men were hand-picked not based upon their birth or social class, but solely upon their ability and merit, since each man would have at his side not only a friend and brother in arms, but rather than risk allowing their watching lover to glimpse cowardice, the men rushing into danger and harm's way to aid each other as they fought to keep their partners alive.
Can you imagine going into battle with your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is? Seems like that would be more difficult than going in with a buddy. I guess it worked for these guys, but boy, that seems hard to believe.
Young men forming relationships with older and more experienced tutors was nothing new, the older man taking the younger under his wing.
I think they call that pedophilia today. I don't know.
It was thought that extending this practice to the military would result in a unit with unrivaled morale in the face of danger, and the accomplishments of the Sacred Band would go on to prove this theory to be correct. A young man would be chosen by a mentor in his early 30s, the two bound by ceremonial vows. Training for the Sacred Band consisted of wrestling, dancing, and horse riding. The men...
So they wrestled a lot in this unit, I suspect, is what it looks like. Horse riding, dancing. All right.
Spending virtually all of their time with each other, so as to foster deep bonds, and perhaps even love, twice enabling incredible victories over the Spartans, who had once been thought invincible.
Heck, if it works, we should take a husband and wife couple, send them off together to you pick the war and see how they do. I don't think
including
it's
their
gonna work.
king. A defeat that has since been described as the most decisive battle ever fought by Greeks against Greeks, and one that resulted in Thebes replacing Sparta as the dominant power in Greece. Number 1. The Ghost Army. The US Ghost Army would inflict serious defeats on its foes without firing a single shot, who used detailed and elaborate illusions to confuse, mislead, and deceive the enemy with an arsenal of unlikely weapons that included inflatable tanks, rubber airplanes, costumes, and sound trucks.
And this would be PSYOPs in World War II, right? Operation Fortitude. You need people like this who are creative thinkers and come up with crazy things that the other side's going to think, ooh, that may be a tank, and it's an inflatable tank. This kind of stuff is so intriguing when you do the history and look around at all the PSYOPs that have been done, whether it's World War II like this, or whether it goes back to Troy.
To trick the German army in North Africa into thinking that the upcoming British attack would take place much further south than was actually planned, forcing the Germans to divert vast amounts of military assets away from the main front lines.
What do you think we're doing today like this? Do you think we're sending troops or making announcements we're going to send them and we're not? Showing a picture of a guy getting off a plane, 10 guys, and they say there's going to be 4,000, there's only 400. Why not? Put that in the comments. What you think we're doing today through our media and internet to convince people we've got more and we've got a ghost army.
1,100 talented individuals were recruited not from the military, but from art schools, advertisement agencies. The unit's talents were put to use in 20 separate missions, where the intricately crafted illusions fooled the enemy about where Allied troops were stationed, what their numbers were, and where they intended to attack.
They're like a set designer on a movie. They come up with these things. That's probably where they work today. Question for you guys. What do you think these Ghost Army members would be doing today? Would they be in the CIA? Do they work in Hollywood? I'm curious. What do you guys think?
Could see them on the ground, masking the true size and position of Allied forces. Dummy airfields with fake laundry hanging outside to make them appear real. The sonic element used advanced sound recordings of real infantry units and vehicles, impersonating radio operators from real units to misdirect the listening Germans. While last but not least, the atmosphere element used actors to spread misinformation that they hoped would be picked up by enemy spies, as well as posing as members of other divisions and even generals, while troop transports loaded with just a single driver and 2 soldiers in the rear would drive around, giving a false impression of large-scale troop.
I love the idea. My biggest question, which I asked you earlier, is how are we doing this today? I'm sure there's levels and levels of deception that we do in your country, but I'm curious what you think we're doing. I find this so fascinating.
On multiple occasions, the Ghost Army turned the tide of battle in favor of the Allies, in General Patton's line at Metz, by pretending to be a much larger force of 20,000 men, thus preventing the Germans from exploiting the gap and possibly dooming the entire operation.
If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. For my current subscribers, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching.